2, 3, 4.
Hello and welcome to Chit Chat with Jed and Co, the show where everyone has their say. Can we ask you please subscribe free to our YouTube channel, comment and give us a like. Today's show comes from the fantastic Studio 23 and is sponsored by St Mirren legend Tony Fitzpatrick's Legacy Comps Prize Bonanza. You can win incredible prizes which include up to £1,000 7 days a week for only 99 pence a ticket. One of Tony's main objectives is to help youth sports clubs, charities and general good causes. Please give them a visit at legacycomps.com. Now, today's guest, I am joined with an old friend that I have never met until today. That's what it feels like. In the next hour, we're going to be talking about being an original cast member in EastEnders, ghostwriting David Beckham's Autobiography, inventing stories for the best-selling computer game FIFA, and the chances are we'll talk about football along the way. Welcome to the show, Tom Watt.
Jed, it's great to see you, mate.
It's been a long time coming, hasn't it?
Absolutely, it has taken a bit of organising, but yeah, I knew we'd get there in the end.
Now, you were born in Wanstead, Essex, and you're best known, when I was growing up, incredible to have you here, playing Lofty, Holloway in one of the UK's biggest shows, EastEnders. How did that happen?
Okay, so, funny enough, I always wondered about that. So the character was called Lofty Holloway, right? So you're right. I was born in Wanstead, but left there when I was like 1 year old. I don't know. And I grew up in Holloway, which is like North London, round the corner from Arsenal. And then I ended up playing that character whose surname is Holloway. I don't know. It's just one of those round. Hey, I'd always wanted to be an actor. Did me school plays and all that business. And went to university, did a degree in drama, had my own little theatre company for ages. And all the time, actually, while I was still at college, I was already doing like little bits and pieces, Granada TV, Yorkshire TV, you know, starts with extra work and then maybe a line or a... So I was running a touring theatre company. And then when we had downtime, I could literally, they were fantastic actually, particularly the casting department at Granada were big supporters of what our little company, we were called Public Spirit. And they were big supporters, came to all the shows, loved the shows, you know what I mean, got the word out. It was really good. I mean, I guess we were based in Manchester and they were in Manchester, so it kind of worked. But so I was already getting quite good work, TV work. And eventually closed down that company because we were having a brilliant time, Jeb, but we weren't making any money. So eventually you think this is a bit self-indulgent, really. So, in fact, we used to go out, we'd do a show, right? It used to take 6 months to create a show. And then it took another 6 months. We'd go on tour with it, tour all over the country, art centres, pubs, community centres, you know, wherever we could get her. And, but we'd always lose money. So when we finished the tour, we'd go out, same name, Public Spirit, but we'd go out as a painting and decorating company to make the money back. Do you know what I mean? So you thought after 3 or 4 years of that, you thought, this is kind of, you know. So knocked it on the head, moved back to London, and then kind of got a couple of really good parts. One, funny enough, back in Manchester at Granada, lead in a kids' TV detective thing. And then it just got myself an agent. And then that EastEnders just came along. I didn't know anything about it. Just came along like an audition does. You know, someone knew someone who knew someone. And they went, oh, would you go up? And I just went along for a couple of auditions and met. The first audition was with a woman called Gretchen Franklin, who played... I can never think of the character names, but she was like the old lady who lived upstairs from character I was supposed to play. So they envisaged that there'd be, you know, Gretchen Franklin, she had the little dog. What was her name?
Oh, Ethel.
Yeah, Ethel, thanks. Oh.
Ethel, yeah, Willie.
But so
Willie was the name of the dog.
We went and did an audition together.
Yeah.
And it was one of those, Jed, where, and I don't know, maybe this made a difference, but I remember going, And actually, we hit it off when we were reading the parts. Really hit it off. It was really, she was a brilliant, brilliant actress. Absolutely brilliant. But as people, didn't work at all. So I don't mean we got on fine, but anything other than the work, we're arguing. And it was the first time I'd ever met her. And within 5 or 10 minutes, like we do the reading, great, that's fine. But then within 5 or 10 minutes, we're arguing about stuff, politics or whatever. You know what I mean? But maybe that, I don't know if that kind of helped. There was obviously a bit of spark there anyway. And so just got cast in this new thing and you thought, great. It was a year's contract, which was unheard of. Unheard of in my career anyway. And just kind of got started on it. So it was just like the way people get parts, just happening to be in the right place, right time, get put up for it, and it clicks sort of thing. And that was it really.
Unbelievable. And again, I grew up in the 80s, and at that time I think Channel 4.
We all grew up in the 80s, Jed.
Yeah, only 4 channels. And you know, and the people's attention is all over the place now. They get their stuff in. So I think what was the biggest viewing audience?
Oh no,
figures?
the viewing figures were stupid. I mean, it took maybe 5 or 6 months for all the kind of, because it was very new what they were trying to do. Obviously, there were already soap operas like Brookside, like Coronation Street, but it was, they were trying to do something new, and it took, I would say, 5 or 6 months for it to kind of stick. The kind of combination of what we were doing, like really good scripts, good cast. So the program itself, was finding its feet, and actors were finding their feet with the characters, and writers were starting, and it was starting to work. But then also with soap operas, there's always the kind of the press, the media attention, people talking about it to each other. Do you know what I mean? Or did you see what happened last night? Or what do you think is going to happen tomorrow night? All of that stuff. It probably took 5 or 6 months. And then, because I ended up being in it first 3 years it was on, and I would say certainly for 2.5 years, we were getting regular 25, 30 million people. And obviously you're right, television has changed completely. It was funny actually, I remember reading a piece about Brookside, which was set in Liverpool, do you know what I mean? It was really very, very well-written show and stuff. And but I remember someone talking about Brookside in the papers and actually saying, oh, Brookside's brilliant, it's so realistic. The only thing that is unrealistic about Brookside is nobody's talking about what's happening in EastEnders. There was that much part of it. It was like national conversation. And it's hard to imagine now, because you're right, then it was, those were the days of linear television. And not only was it that there were only 4, 5 channels, can't remember when Channel 5 started, but not only were there only those 4 or 5 channels, but also if you didn't want to watch it when it went out, you had to dig out your VHS and record the thing. You know what I mean? It wasn't like on demand.
Yeah.
You couldn't stream it. It was kind of, so one, it was that there was so little else, but also it was that it was appointment. Like if you wanted to watch it, then you watched it at 7:30 on a Tuesday, and everybody watched it at 7:30 on a Tuesday. Do you get what I mean? So all the conversations aligned. So it'd go out at 7:30 on a Tuesday. So Wednesday morning at work, you're talking about what you saw on telly last night. And it was that, because everybody watched the same things at the same time. Do you get what I mean?
I do.
And it's a different world. And now, I don't know what kind of figures they get, but compared to that, it would be tiny. But that's not because there aren't now. I mean, I think with soap operas generally, there's too many episodes now. They don't leave enough space for people to talk about it. Do you get what I mean? But a lot of it is just to do with how television's changed.
Yeah.
You're absolutely right. And linear television is kind of a bit dead, really, that now you do get, I mean, it's interesting. If you look at every now and again there'll be a drama that does really good numbers. But, really good numbers now is 11, 12 million.
Yeah.
But the things that still hit those are football matches, marriage or death of a monarch. Do you know what I mean? It's those where you're watching it live. Those are the ones that still draw people to linear television. But for drama, there's so many other places you can go, to streamers, to, there's so many channels and all of that. And you can watch what you want when you want it.
Indeed.
So it's a different world. It's a different world.
Now, you're saying there, your peak 30 million, you worked with Dirty Den, with Ange and all the main characters, Pete Beale, Kath Beale and all these people. What was it like to be one of the most recognisable faces in the UK? How did you deal with that?
I'll be honest with you, Jed. I'll be really honest with you. And I don't think there's a person who wouldn't, if they really think about it, would go, yeah, I was like, it's hard for that stuff not to go to your head. It's hard. Do you know what I mean? Because you go literally overnight, you go from being sort of, living your life, living your own little world, and acting happens to be what you do for a living, to pretty much soon as you go out of the house, you go to the shop, you go, to a restaurant, you go to football, you go do what you do. People coming up all the time, and that kind of stuff, it kind of goes to your head. I'm trying to put it politely. You get a bit up yourself, really. Do you know what I mean? You get a bit sort of self-important. And I think that for a spell I got like that. Do you know what I mean? But then it's like it's like the sort of, it's like the shutters coming up. You suddenly realise, you go, actually, it's nothing to do with me. It's the character that's well known. It's not me. Do you know what I mean? People are coming up and going, oh, hello, Lofty. They're not going, oh, hello, Tom. How's your career going? They're going, hello, Lofty. Are you going to marry Michelle? Do you get what I mean? So, and once you twig that, that's great, because one, you stop behaving like an arse, which I think I probably did to be fair, people with the character I played, there wasn't much mileage in being offensive to that. What are you going to do? Go and be rude to Lofty? I mean, what's the point of that? But also, I've always found that people, unless drink had been taken, I found people are polite, they're friendly, they're funny. Do you know what I mean? They want to engage. So I never really had but I don't think I always behaved all that well. I'd get up in the morning, I'd go down to the shop for tea bags, and I'd go, well, just leave me alone. Do you know what I mean? I wouldn't say that, but I'd be a bit offhand, and I regret that. But I think it's something that you would have to go through. I don't think anybody, I think about that cast. Some of them were really well-known actors already, but I think about that cast and I look now and I think, and you go, everybody has to go through that. But once you do go through that, then, and you realise how sort of privileged you are, really, to be playing a character that so many people are seeing your work, and the possibilities that come with that. Do you know what I mean? The opportunities that come with that, both in terms of acting, because I used to because I always had an idea about life after. Do you know what I mean? I went in after a year and said, I want to leave. Just because I thought, I've done a year. If I wanted to do the same thing over, I could have gone and worked in a bank or something. I mean, I didn't see. But anyway, we talked, and one thing and another, and ended up staying the first 3 years. But so I always had an eye that there'd be something else. And initially that was other acting jobs. So when people used to go on holiday, other cast members, used to go on holiday, or they might at Christmas, they might go and do panto or something like that, make a few bob. I never did that. I always went and did other shows. plays. I'd go in and do a play or an episode of something. I started doing presenting there was a thing called Night Network, which was the first, guys, this going back, this must be kind of late 80s now, mid to late 80s. And I don't know if you remember, but television used to stop at like midnight.
That's right.
And you'd just get the card, didn't you? But they kind of broke through that, and ITV created a thing called Night Network, which was specifically designed for late night, and that would run 12 till 3, so midnight till 3. And they asked me to present on it, be one of the presenters. There's a whole lot of presenters, and they'd show weird, like old Batmans, TV Batmans or something. Showed some funny stuff. It was good. And I just used to do kind of interview things. And, with whoever, really. So I was doing that at the same time as EastEnders. But then also I would go off and I'd do, I remember doing a wonderful play there was a theatre called the Theatre Royal in Stratford in the East End, called The Ticket of Leave Man, which couldn't have been more different, really, to EastEnders. It was an old Victorian melodrama. It was great, brilliant. And then I produced a play that I'd written at a pub theatre in Islington. So I'd do other stuff like that. So I always thought there were, and that was true in acting, but also I found as kind of things went on, playing Lofty made those things possible, but also made a lot of other things possible too.
100%. Now, just the last kind of question on EastEnders. Lofty's still alive and kicking. You went back in 2018 and 2022. One, did you enjoy it?
Good research.
One, did you enjoy it? And two, would you ever see yourself going back on a regular basis?
Enjoy it, yeah, very much. It's weird actually, because the 2 times I've been back, it's only been for an episode at a time. Or the first one might have been 2 episodes and the second was 1. But I'm like, Lofty is now like a professional mourner. I get wheeled out for funerals. Do you know what I mean? But I tell you, on 2 counts, one is because there are still people who were in it when I was in it, 30, long time ago. And it's great seeing them because I wouldn't see them otherwise. You know what I mean? And it's like going back in time. It's brilliant. But also, there are some really good actors in it. You know what I mean? And so meeting them and kind of seeing how they work, because I think it's harder work now.
Yeah. More episodes.
I think the recording, when we were doing it, it was almost like you were almost putting on a play every week. You'd have time to rehearse, used to be like Saturday mornings you'd go in and you'd rehearse just the script in a rehearsal room. And then the Monday you'd rehearse on camera and stuff like that. And then you'd film Tuesday, Wednesday, Thursday, outdoor scenes Friday. And then you'd be on to another 2 episodes. And it was like rehearsing a play, Jed. Now, no time for rehearsal. Do you know what I mean? No, they've just got to get on and do it. And do you look at the quality of what some of those actors are producing under that sort of pressure and you go... And so, to be honest, just as much as anything, just for the challenge, I would quite like to have a little go on that. Do you know what I mean? Because the thing that would make it really difficult is learning lines, and I've never had trouble learning lines. So I would, absolutely. But I think probably that ship has sailed. Do you know what I mean?
You never know.
Well, no, and I'm sure other people will die and I will get invited to the funeral. Do you know what I mean? I'm fine with that.
Absolutely incredible. But as you said, Tom, EastEnders, you've admitted that opened up doors for you, which was good. And you're an author of several books, which includes none other than ghostwriting the legend that is David Beckham's autobiography. How did that happen?
Well, I was already writing books. I mean, funny enough, that all started up here, not here in Glasgow, but up in Edinburgh. So I had an idea for a book. This would have been like I was doing a lot of theatre, West End shows, #1 tours, but I had this idea. You'll remember after the Hillsborough disaster in '89. one of the things that came through on the back of that was all-seater stadium. Every stadium had. And so you think about those, I mean, you got them up here, every ground, you had a home terrace, an end. Do you know what I mean? There was like and those were, they would like where the concentration of people were, you know, you look at a place like Villa Park, for example, the old Holt End, it used to hold 17,000 people on one terrace. Do you know what I mean? And I realised that all of those were going to disappear, all those old terraces. And that with that, a whole sort of way of life, a whole kind of history would disappear with it. Because you think, so I grew up Arsenal fan, man and boy, and so I'm thinking, so people have been standing on the North Bank since 1913 when Arsenal moved to North London. And you think about the number of people. Think about the families. Think about the groups of workmates. Think about the people who've come to England from different places, and the first time they've felt like home has been on that terrace, because if you're Arsenal, then everybody's Arsenal together. Do you know what I mean? And all of that, and the conversations and watching football change from that terrace. So I had this idea for a book, and I actually went to Arsenal, spoke to David Dean, who was vice chairman at Arsenal then, and said, I've got this idea for a book. It'd be great if you just give me a few bob to cover me costs. I'll do the book and you can have it and you do what you want with it. And they went, nah, I don't think we'd do that, because it meant them committing money to me. Not a lot of money. I wasn't asking for a lot of money, but just to cover my costs. And they went, no, we won't do that, but we will help you. And they were true. They were brilliant. There were people there, David himself, but also, you know, Ken Fryer, who was the kind of managing director, I suppose, then, and you know, people who ran who wrote the program and stuff. And so what I did was, it was basically it was an oral history of a football terrace. And sorry, it's a long way to get round to David Beckham, but it's where it started.
Loving it.
So it was the first time anybody had applied the principles of oral history. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
Oral history. Because why I wanted to put it in a book was I thought, well, as soon as all-seater stadiums come in, all that history, all those memories, they'll all be lost. Or if they're not lost, they'll be changed because people will be sitting. You know, they'll be remembering back rather than remembering in the moment. So it was, I spoke to, I know, probably 100 and something supporters of all ages. I mean, I spoke to a couple of people who had actually stood on the North Bank for the very first game against Leicester Foss in 1930. The very first game. Because still, in the 80s, there were still people around. Right through to, you know, and it was great. And Arsenal, like I say, were very helpful. They gave me access to all the minutes of all the board meetings going back to 1913. So I could go through those, to spend hours with these big old books, going through all the references. You know, North Bank was destroyed, the roof was destroyed during the war and was rebuilt because the ground was used as an ARP station and stuff. And, you know, all these kind of players, managers, St John's Ambulance, police, everybody who'd had anything to do with that terrace over the years. And actually did some of the work up here, funny enough, because one of the chapters was about heroes. And I came up to Paradise to see Charlie Nick, and ended up Liam Brady was the manager then, and I'd had me run into a Liam, great man, God, what a man! But I mean, really great man. But I'd had me run into him. But he heard I was in the building, so he said, "Oh, come up and talk to me as well." Do you know what I mean? So it was all sorts of people. When Arsenal said they wouldn't fund it, that meant I had to go out and find a publisher. And this is where I'm saying that playing lofty. So obviously, eventually, the work has to stand or fall on it's what it is. It's either good or it's not. It's successful or it's not. But to get your foot in the door, for people to go, oh yeah, I'll take a phone call from him, or I'll sit down and I'll listen to that proposal. And I ended up with a publishers up in Edinburgh called Mainstream Books. Don't know if they still exist even. I think they do. Brilliant. Just great people. And I worked really hard on it. So I got the book, did the book. They were really pleased with it. They did a great job on it. I would drive around with hundreds of copies in the boot of my car, dropping it in at shop. We had a great time. We had a great time with it. So my first couple of books, and that first book, it was called The End. And that first book was really, really successful. It was just kind of right time for it. Do you know what I mean? It was just when things were football was just starting to become a little bit fashionable. Do you know what I mean? It was published, I think, pretty much the same year as Nick Hornby's book, At Fever Pitch. And people were just starting to... so it sold really well. In fact, Margaret Thatcher, The Downing Street Years, was published the same autumn. And I'm so proud because she hated football. Well, no, do you know what I mean? She'd gone for the miners. She'd gone for the media, the press, the unions, the press unions, NUJ. And the next, she was coming for football fans. She hated them. And in her constituency, a book about football fans outsold Margaret Thatcher. And I thought, that's great. So it did really well. And so from that point, other people get interested. I did another book with Mainstream and then did some... Anyway, so I've kind of started to get... And I was writing for the Observer newspaper, just as a freelance. I wasn't staff or anything like that. But I'd go and cover games for them, which I loved doing. 800 words on the final whistle, all that. I loved that. The pressure was brilliant. And I played a lot of charity football. So you meet a lot of people in football, don't you? You kind of go and playing against ex-pros and you used to play games up here. You used to play games all over the country. It was brilliant time. And one of the people I met in that process, we had a game at Villa Park. And it was my lads, the Walford Boys Club, who were basically just a bunch of actors, a couple of ringers and some mates. The Walford Boys Club, which is an EastEnders team, playing against an ex-international 11. There were people like Dave Watson, Frank McLeod. Anyway, and it was on the pitch of Villa Park, by the way. So, brilliant. It was a brilliant afternoon. We beat them we won 5-1 or something. It was fantastic. And, but that afternoon, although he hadn't been involved in organising it, I don't think, but the commercial manager at Aston Villa was there, a fellow called Tony Stevens, who became, in fact, I went to visit him last week. He became a really good friend. He was commercial manager at Villa at the time. Then he became commercial manager at Wembley and eventually became an agent. But, when you say the word agent now, people kind of go, oh, because it's got all sort of, I can remember actually at Celtic Park again, being up to visit Gordon Strachan. I can't remember why, but I popped in when Gordon was manager. And we're all in his office, him and the coaching staff and me. We're in the office. Suddenly, and then the secretary comes in and she said, oh, Kevin Moran's here to see you, Gordon. So he went, oh, okay. So she went out. He said, right, turned off all the lights and we all had to get down and hide behind the furniture. I said, what are we doing? Anyway, Kevin Moran comes into this darkened room and Gordon Strachan just went, he's gone to the dark side. He's gone to the dark, because Kevin was there as an agent, wanted to talk about it. So that's what people think about with agents now. And I'm sure Kevin's great. I've never met him since. So, but it was a very, very funny afternoon. But Tony was the complete opposite to what you imagine. The man of the utmost integrity. I mean, he was just... And this was a guy who, when would this have been, kind of mid-90s and later, he was representing... David Platt was his first client. he took Platty to Italy. But he had David Platt, Alan Shearer, Michael Owen, Robbie Keane, and Michael Bridges, plus David Beckham. Wow. So that is a concentration of talent. And anyway, I was in touch with Tony all the time anyway, just because we were my mates. And I'd met David a couple of times, and we'd always got on fine. He was quite a bit younger than me, obviously, but we got on. And I suppose the world he found himself in, I was kind of familiar with that world from EastEnders. So, and obviously long since, I wasn't sort of, it's a footballer. Much as I admire and respect footballers, I'm not like in awe. Do you know what I mean? It's not that. I'll tell you a great story, Jim. I'll tell you a great story.
Love it.
Which was, so me and Tony, we were having dinner at a lovely pub hotel place in the Midlands. And we just got there. And Tony took a phone call from David to say, I'm driving down from, when would this have been? Sort of maybe about 2001, something like that. Yeah, around then. 2001. Anyway, he said, I'm driving down from Manchester to London to see Victoria. He'd had a game that afternoon. He's driving down. And he said, I'll stop off for dinner. So fine. So Dave gets there and the three of us are sitting there, and there was a young waitress. There's a young waitress, and she was like, she's kind of hovering. Do you know what I mean?
Yeah.
So every time she come to either take an order or bring some food, she's just like waiting around a little bit too long. So you go, David. So this is going on all through the meal. Eventually, and she's like looking, and so eventually she comes back, do the bill. Back, and she's just stood there. And the three of us, we know. So David actually reaches into his pocket to get a pen out.
Give her an autograph.
And she looks at him, and then she looks at me, and she goes to me, would you mind, could I have your autograph? You go, man, we're falling off the chairs, because this was just when it was really kicking off with David. It was very, anyway, so after that, there was a whole thing went on. I didn't even know that David was wanting to do an autobiography. But I had gone to a concert. Obviously, Tony knew me as a writer, but he'd never made the. But I remember going to his birthday, and we went to. I don't know if you know who Brian Wilson is. Brian Wilson was the kind of genius behind the Beach Boys, and he went right around this time. He did a thing called the Pet Sounds Tour, which is basically him and a band going out. And Brian Wilson had, got messed up with drugs, had mental health, but he'd kind of got himself together. And it was the most amazing. It was at National Indoor Arena in Birmingham. Absolutely brilliant. One of the great nights of live music I've ever been at. And, Tony had organised for his birthday with them. So we all went to that. And I remember writing a piece about that gig for a mate of mine who had a music magazine. And I thought, it'd be a nice way to say thank you to Tony. I'll send him what I've written. So I sent him what I'd written about Brian Wilson. Obviously nothing to do with football. It was about... But it was quite emotional and emotive. Do you know what I mean? It was a very powerful night. Because he was constantly... This was like a genius on the edge of a nervous breakdown. Do you know what I mean? That was what the story of the piece was. It was brilliant, brilliant gig. So I've sent it off to Tony, and literally the day after he got it, he said, I think you should write David's autobiography. So he knew I wrote, but he hadn't made the,
Should you?
And there were probably other reasons why it seemed like a good idea. One, I wasn't staff on a newspaper, so there wasn't going to be any danger. There wasn't going to be any sort of like indiscretion. There wasn't going to be stories leaking out or anything like that. He knew he could. They knew they could trust me completely from that point of view, because I wouldn't have a newspaper editor over my shoulder going, "Oh, you must have some good stories. We'll give you a bit of extra," any of that. But also because I'd had some experience of that whole celebrity thing. We were talking before about that. I had some experience of the world that David was in. Do you get what I mean?
I do.
And to be fair, we came from the same neck of the woods. I kind of knew about football and knew a lot of people in football. And so so I was doing a TV series. I can't remember what it's called now. Anyway, it was down. Anyway, I kind of nipped off after a day's filming, went up to, they were living out by Epping, and went up to spend a bit of time with David and Victoria, talk through the idea, talk through what I would need to do it, because I'd never ghostwritten before. I'd done these little bits of interviewing and then taking maybe a paragraph or a page or whatever it was, but never a whole story like that. And kind of spent 2 or 3 hours just chatting things through, and I thought, actually, he really wants to do this. He really wants. And once I knew that he really wanted it, I went, that's fine. Yeah, I'd love to do it.
Connection was there.
Yeah. Not kind of, then and now. Never been best of mates or anything. There's 20 years apart. The world he moves in is completely. But I will run into him now and again. And there's professionally, he did a great job on that book, and I like to think I did a great job for. Well, I know I did a great job for him. Do you know what I mean? So it was just one of those, and I think, why I say that playing Lofty and EastEnders opened, because, it was that EastEnders football team was why I met Tony in the first place.
He'll have remembered you from
EastEnders.
Yeah, probably, He grew up in that era.
Yeah. Well, Victoria grew up round the corner from the studios.
Yeah, but they would have watched EastEnders, you playing Lofty.
Yes, as kids, yeah. I mean, David probably would have been a bit too busy playing football, but Mum and Dad, Ted and Sandra, would have watched it. But yeah, and it was, and that was brilliant experience, because he was so good to work with, and I did found my own way of doing ghostwriting that was a bit different from perhaps how other people do it, and it just, between people having an idea who I was, and obviously knowing who David was, it kind of opened doors. So I was able to kind of structure the story without. It's funny, I went and did, usually you would start by going and doing all the press cuttings, looking at all the press cuttings, working out. And I remember going up to Tony's office, because he'd kept everything. Everything was on file, every newspaper article that ever been done about David. He was very kind of thorough and professional like that. Do you know, he never took a penny out of any one of David's contracts, Tony, because he said that would put him in a position where he was compromised. He didn't ever want to be in a position where he's going to a player, yeah, maybe you should leave because it would be worth a few bob to him. Do you know what I mean? Never took any money for a contract, only ever took a percentage of commercial earnings. He was a proper bloke. He's a proper bloke, Tony. He really is. But anyway, I went up to his office. He got all the stuff. I took like 1 year. There you go. I sold his story.
Where do you start?
Well, where do you start? But also, what you realise after a day is you go, actually, this isn't David's story. What I'm reading in all these papers, this isn't David's story. This is other people's version of David's story. And that's no good to me, because it's not there. You don't want to be going, oh, this was in the paper, what did you think about that? This was in the paper, what do you think? So I binned all that off, and I said, I'm not going to, and I didn't look at another newspaper all the time we were working on the book. What I did instead was talk to people who'd been important in David's life. Mum and Dad, obviously, but, Eric Harrison, youth team coach at United, his youth team coach at United, Gary Neville, who's his big mate. Do you know what I mean? People like Victoria, obviously, people who've been important, and they helped me put the story together. Because with ghostwriting, my number one thing is I never ever, and I've ghostwritten probably half a dozen books since, some about football, some not. But the one thing I never ever do is say to the person whose story, if I'm doing the interview with them, somewhere around 50 hours, 60 hours of interview to ghostwrite a life story, an autobiography. But I never say to the person what happened next. I never do it because, of course, none of us remember what happened next. If I said to you, what were you doing in January 1988? You go, well, I don't know. You know what I mean? It's our memories don't work like that. But if I was able to say to you, in January 1988, you were doing this, then it all comes flooding back. So I think the point of the research is to make a timeline. And whether that research is reading other stuff or, in David's case, talking to other people, they told me what happened next. So that when me and David spent time talking, I would say to him, so this happened. How did that feel? Who else was in the room? Who said what? Do you get what I mean? Because once you say, this is what's happening here, everything comes flooding back. And obviously it was a very eventful year. That the year we were working together was when we agreed to do the book, we thought we already knew the ending, which was that David was going to come on the pitch before the last game of the season at Old Trafford and effectively sign for the rest of his professional career as a Man United player. But that year, at the end of the year, he signed for Real Madrid. So it was a big year. It was a big year. So I was able to kind of follow that firsthand as well, do you know what I mean? And went out to Madrid for the signing and one thing and another.
So you didn't envisage that, so that just took you in a different direction.
Yeah, absolutely. So you'd find yourself talking about what happened 15 years ago, but also what happened yesterday. You know what I mean? And it all kind of pieces together. And the only person I didn't talk to for that book was Sir Alex, who I don't think he was massively happy about David doing a book in the first place. And I don't think was massively happy about the book, as it turned out. Probably didn't read it, but would have had bits, drawn to his attention. But for me, almost the best thing in the book is David talking about his relationship with Sir Alex, because he worships.
It's a good guy.
Do you know what I mean? And even though, like, during that last year, during the year we were working together, there's big fallings out between the two of them. But the amazing thing, this is one of the great things about David as a person, Jed, is that, if you've got a mate or you've got a family member or whoever it is, you've got a relationship that's really important, and then something in that relationship goes sour. Once it's gone sour, most of us, when we think back to the relationship, it kind of poisons our memories of what went on before. Do you know what I mean? Or affects it. You start thinking, oh, maybe that was where this relationship started going wrong and all that. And David, pretty much, certainly more than anybody I've ever met, or even though he was in the middle of it going really not going well with Sir Alex at all, and David talking very honestly about that. But then I talked to him about Sir Alex when, David was a young player and all that. And David was just like he was back then. The fact that he was having a bad time with Alex now did not affect at all his memory of what Sir Alex, or just Alex as he was then, what he was like, what he did for David. I mean, he said, it's my career. Alex Ferguson made my career. And he never lost sight of that. Do you get what I mean?
That's the mark of David.
Yeah, I think it is. It's a great quality to have that, but not having a whole memory spoiled by what happens at the end. It's a really it was
incredible story to get you to that. Now, most young computer gamers, myself included.
Oh yeah, you're a young computer gamer.
Well, I
right?
was one back in the day. Played FIFA on the PlayStation, right? We've all played it at one time. Now, I believe you invented stories for this best ever selling computer game. I mean, that must be amazing. Tell us about that.
Yeah, that was more recently, really. That was one, Jed, there's not really a kind of how did that happen, because I still haven't got the faintest idea how it happened. I got a call out of the blue from EA Sports from a woman who I've never met saying, it was an invitation to connect on LinkedIn. Said, I would like to connect, have a job I would like to talk to you about. Fine. Jed, I'll be perfectly honest with you, I've never played a computer game in my life. My son played them. I never played one in my life. Anyway, she got in touch. Marcy got in touch. She then passed me on to guys up in Vancouver. And what they were after was they were having, probably after your time as a computer gamer, but FIFA as it was then, it's EAFC now, but FIFA as it was then, they decided to put in what they call a story mode. So that rather than just playing the games, they create like a story. And when I say create, I mean shoot it like a movie. Animated, but like a movie, motion capture cameras and all that kind of thing. So that you'd have a story and the games were played as part of the story. So you'd be the main character in the film. You'd effectively be, it was Alex Hunter was the name of the main character. And you'd play as Alex Hunter. And the games that you play would be in the context of that story. So it's called story mode. A lot of those kind of games have it. So when they first got in touch with me, they said, we think that they must have been aware of me writing about football, broadcasting about football, one thing and another. And actually the guy who eventually hired me was English. He's from Manchester, big Man City fan. And so he must have known that although I wasn't world's leading expert in anything, and never have been, what I did have was a good overall picture. Do you get what I mean? And so what they asked me to do, they said, they explained that they were doing this story and that, they were starting to script it and one thing and another. They said, what we need someone to look at what we're doing and make sure that it's credible. Make sure that it's realistic. Like, what does happen when a schoolboy turns 16 and joins the academy? What would it be like being inside the room when a negotiation over a new contract is happening? What would the numbers be? What would how do things work? How do things fit together? Basically, what they didn't want is for people to go into the game, because basically you're come into this world. It's called The Journey. The story mode was called The Journey. And it took a lad from academy right through to, I think he ended up playing for Real Madrid and playing for England and all this over the course of 3 years, 3 iterations of the game, because it comes out every year. And it was like they didn't want. So if you're saying come into this world, this imaginative, you only need to kind of get one thing wrong where people go, that isn't what happens in real football. And the whole thing kind of goes a bit. So they wanted someone who could just check all that, just to make sure, this is the amount of money that a first team pro at a League One club might be earning. This is how a loan move gets organised. Do you know what I mean? And I had that kind of general knowledge. And if I didn't know, I knew to ask. And they kind of knew that. So that's what I got hired to do. But then we started work and I just hit it off with them, really. And so very quickly they said, we think you could do a bit more than what you're doing. We'd like you to help create the stories in the first place. So that's what I started doing. So for 4 or 5 years, we did The Journey for 3 years, and then we did it's a kind of street football thing. I'm trying to remember what it was called, but street football thing that happened on the back of it. And that used to be brilliant, Jed. We'd go, it was like, this is a game that like 25 million plus, 25 million people are going to buy it, never mind how many are going to play it. So you're going, audience all over the world. And it's like, basically there's 3 of us, and one of those was constantly on calls about something else. So really it was 2 of us are working out the stories that are going to go on the game in a year and a half's time. Do you know what I mean? And there's so much work around it. I mean, it's huge. Putting a computer game together that is something. I mean, I remember going to there was I think it was the 3rd year, there was some scenes that involved Thierry Henry. And he was playing himself. You get what I mean? He was playing himself. So they got in touch with me and said, we're filming at a studio's down in Hoxton in London. I said, we're filming down there. We've got Thierry Henry there for the day. Just wondering if you would come along, because you know Thierry, don't you? I said, yeah, no. Come along, and maybe, because we want him to feel comfortable with the script and all that. So come along, and if it's all right with you, if Thierry wants to make changes, then you can work with him to change to what he wants. So Thierry's good as gold, absolutely good. But why I say this is the scale of the thing. So in this big studios, there's like a big studio. Right in the middle of the studio is this little area with black curtains around, with a television screen in it. And the television screen has got pictures with the words that Thierry has to say going across the bottom of the screen, and he has to say those words. And that was what they thought might need changing as we went along. So there's me, Thierry, and the producer who'd first hired me. We're in this little blacked off area. And I'm just, give him a couple of ideas on, maybe focus on that word, all that. But the thing was, we're in this little blacked off area. Outside that blacked off area, there must have been 200 people. Not 200 people standing around watching. 200 people working. You know what I mean? It was just like, and you go, but you're like in the little black box. And you go, this is great to be able to be doing this. Do you know what I mean? So that was so much fun, even though I still haven't ever played a computer game. But I didn't need to, because it was something different. And now I still do some work for 3A Sports. They don't do story modes anymore, but they do have bits where they need script on screen and stuff like that, or they need introductions to games for the commentators to say and stuff like that. And so I'll work on script, which is also fun in a completely different way. Because it's very like acting. You have to get yourself into character, but you have to invent your own script, if you get what I mean. They just tell me, this is what's happening, and then I have to invent the script and different characters saying this stuff. So it's really interesting to do, really fun to do. Only 3-4 weeks a year, maybe at most. But it's really fun to do. So I am still working for them, but story mode that was amazing to do. That was amazing to do. Because it was obviously telling stories, that's what I do. But in that context, computer games, and on an organisation that kind of huge was... Yeah,
what that does as well, you come out your comfort zone.
Yeah.
So what your story's telling me, and it will tell the viewers here, anybody watching that, you got to come out your comfort zone.
100%. You absolutely, Jed, that is all the best jobs I've ever done. I mean, the most fun, the most rewarding, the most worthwhile. Every single last one of them is someone says to you, can you do this? Or you have the idea yourself, can you do this? And you say, yeah, of course I can. And inside you go, no, I can't. But you do it anyway. But you do it anyway. Do you know what I mean? And those are, I remember I did a legacy book for the 2010 World Cup in South Africa. Took ages to organise. And in fact, for a long time, I didn't think it was going to get organised. And finally, I mean, it was only, I knew a guy called Dr. Danny Jordan, wonderful man, who led the South Africa bid and then led the local organising committee. So I kept on at Danny, and, you know, it just kept getting pushed to one side and one thing and another. And but eventually, literally, it was about a week before the tournament started. They said, yeah, we'll do this. And at that point, I went, I don't know South Africa. I don't know South Africans. I don't know anything about. I'd had this idea, which was to go all over the country, talk to people not about the football. And this was only for South Africa. It wasn't ever published anywhere else. But just to talk to people about the tournament, not about the football, although there were players in there, Xabi Alonso and a few others. But it was just talking to people about the impact of having the World Cup on that country and on the continent of Africa. Because obviously it was South Africa's first World Cup, but it was Africa's first World Cup. And that meant politically, culturally, socially, it was by far the most important World Cup there's ever been. Not in football terms necessarily, but in terms of what it meant, it was just like massive. So, and it was one of those where you've been going, can we do this? Can we do this? Can we do this? And it actually came down to one meeting. I went and had a cup of coffee with the two people who had the final say-so, really. Showed them a book, my previous book, which was big, illustrated. I'd taken copies for them. I went, this is what I imagined the book. And literally in 20 minutes, we did the whole deal. Then I had to come back to England, shoot an episode of New Tricks, thinking, I've got to go back to South Africa. I'm going to spend the next, 6 months of my life there. I don't know anything. But I'm going to do it anyway. And that's the and obviously, you know, and you have faith in yourself, you have faith in whatever. And of course it those other, I mean, it was the most, man, I love that country.
I've been before, it's great, isn't it?
I love that country. I love the people the people have, you know, you get completely the wrong, because obviously in the UK and even more in the US, the picture we get of South Africa is from people who've left. And there's a reason why they've left, by the way. And of course, the reason why they've left is why they speak ill of their own country now. But if you go there and you meet people and you talk to people and you go, wow, these people are. Someone actually, while I was there, said to me, they said, yeah, if you look at what this country's gone through since in building up to the end of apartheid and then subsequent to apartheid, can you think of another country on earth that would have experienced all this where there wouldn't have been a civil war? No. But that was Nelson Mandela's great thing, was that he captured, what he did was he recognised, people think he was some kind of messiah figure, but he wasn't. What he was he believed in the South African people, and he was able to kind of draw people together and get the people of South Africa to be the best possible version of themselves, and what they achieved. And that tournament, although the football wasn't great, by and large, there were a couple. Ghana, Uruguay was an unbelievable night, but by and large, the football wasn't. But what it felt like to be there during that tournament,
incredible.
And that's what I'm saying. You start work on a project like that, and you go, I can't do this, but I'll do it anyway. And you just,
honestly, Tom, that was just an incredible. We could go on and on and on. Honestly, it was such inspiring. As I said to you a second ago, from a young lad, you've come out your comfort zone. You put yourself into the spotlight at times in front of 30 million people. And if I do my maths correctly, that's 1 in every 2 people in the UK, Tom. Yeah. Working with David Beckham. Yeah. Working with the FIFA and the computer games. Being an author. constantly coming out your comfort zone. There'll be a lot of young people watching this show, Tom, and they'll be absolutely glued to your story. So my final question to you,
the young people who are watching this show will be going, who is that old geezer?
I don't believe that for a second.
But people of a certain age might be going, I wonder what he'd been up to.
Well, there you go. You're back now. But my final question to you, right? What advice would you give any young person watching this show today who would like to come out their comfort zone, or a bit, they're not sure, and they want to maybe become an actor or an author or whatever they want to do? What advice would you give them, Tom?
I'll be honest with you, Jed. I'm not sure about that advice thing. Obviously, you know, you say thanks for the kind words about coming out of your comfort zone and one thing and another, but, you know, I've had a lot of luck and a lot of great opportunities, and I had a great my parents were both teachers, and we grew up. It was a really great childhood, and it was a childhood that what I took from my childhood was, things will be all right, things will work out, it'll be okay, and I've kind of kept that with me. Do you know what I mean? I don't mean telling myself that. I mean genuinely feeling, things will be okay. And they have been. So I feel like I had a particular kind of upbringing, which was obviously unique to me, or me and my brother. But also I've had opportunities and I've had chances. I've been given opportunities and chances. And so to say, do this, do that, I don't really know if I'm in a position to advise a young person to say. The only thing I would say is I would look and I'd go, well, if there's one thing I have done is whatever you're doing, do it to the best of your ability. Do it to the maximum. And then when an opportunity comes, say yes. Say yes, and then work out how you're going to do it afterwards. Rather than saying no and spending afterwards wishing you'd said yes. That's it. But, you know, that I can't say to anybody else, do this or do that, because I've had, my own peculiar set of circumstances. And I would say very privileged and very lucky. So I don't feel like going, well, yeah, I would never say do what I do, because, people find their own way. But, probably the most important skill in life is knowing how to concentrate. So concentrate. You know what I mean? And on what you're doing. And like I say, when an opportunity comes, say yes and work out how you're going to do it after.
Well, do you know something? I am absolutely delighted that you agreed and said yes to come on Chit Chat with Jed and Co at Studio 23 today, Tom. Yeah. Tom Watt, thank you.
Absolutely a pleasure, mate.
Thank you.
Great to see you.
Well, ladies and gentlemen, that's our show for Chit Chat with Jed and Co, the show where everyone has their say from Studio 23. Can we ask you please subscribe free to our YouTube channel, comment and give us a like. Today's show is sponsored by St Mirren legend Tony Fitzpatrick's Legacy Comps Prize Bonanza. Give them a follow at legacycomps.com. Thank you very much for watching.